introduction. I didn't hear everything, I hope. I will have my own introduction slide just to repeat if something was missing. So yeah, my name is Konstantin Stadler. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm working for Industrial Ecology Digital Lab and NTNU Trondheim. I have a PhD in neuroscience. I just used this a little bit as excuse. I came to the field of industrial ecology and sustainability analysis through input-output analysis. And I'm not that familiar with other methods, but I picked up quite a lot during the last years. My research focus is mostly on environmental and social impacts of economic activities through computational methods. So my role here at NTNU is as a research software engineer in leading the digital lab. I'm one of the developers of Exiobase. I'm also doing open source development for Pymrio, which is a package for MRIO analysis. We will cover that in some minutes. I'm currently working in contributing to two European Union Horizon projects, BAMBOO and RAINFOREST, and I'm leading one Norwegian Research Council project, HIT. And in the last year, we also established a startup for the commercial use of Exiobase, which is Exio Sustainability Analytics. So from lifecycle assessment to MRIOs. In lifecycle assessment, we follow a product through its life stages. So here we have raw material extraction, processing, assembly, product use, and then the end of life. And if we are, for example, interested in CO2 emissions, we check for the CO2 emissions in all of these processing stages. And then we can accumulate the CO2 emissions, aggregate them, and assign it to one of the phases, usually to the product use. We can do something very similar for national accounts, where we have producers, enterprises, companies, factories, which producing goods and services to consumers and also governments. They are also connected to financial institutions and connected to other economies via imports and exports. So what we want to do here is actually follow a supply chain from the material extraction to the processing stage, to factories globally distributed to the final end users of a product. And in input-output analysis, we do this mostly in matrix forms. So here we have a very simple input-output analysis. Each of the squares establish one matrix. The diagonal matrix describes the domestic economies, how production happens in a specific economy. And the off-diagonal matrices in A and Z show how these economies are connected to each other through imports and exports. Y is what we call final demand, and these are the consumers of the goods and services produced in the economy. And then in green, we have the so-called satellite accounts and extensions. And this can be any environmental stress or impact which can be connected to one of the economic activities. You can make this economic description as detailed as you want. The one requirement is that it is complete. So it should cover all these economic activities so that we have a full picture of the economy. And this can be very aggregated to 3 sectors, or we can then have a description in 100 and 200 sectors. I usually separate these into one economic core, where we have the A set matrix, which describes the intersectoral relationships and the final demand, and the extensions. And in Exiobase, we have, of course, many more values. So this is a heat map of the set matrix, of the A matrix of Exiobase. And we see here the diagonals are these domestic economies. And then we have the trade relationships between these economies. If we look very, if we try to interpret this a little bit, we see some of these economies in the middle or so, which face very much in both directions. And these are these export-dominated countries, which contribute to the global economy. Yeah, Exiobase is one of the very few actually environmentally extended global supply multi-regional input-output tables. We have two separate tables here. We have supply use tables, and from these we can then calculate the input-output tables. For Exiobase, we cover the European Union and its main trading partners. So we have economic descriptions of countries covering about 90% of the global GDP, and the rest of the regions are aggregated to the rest of the world regions. We have 163 industries and about 200 products, and a lot of satellite and impact accounts. It's kind of hard to actually count them, and we'll come back to that later. And we have now a consistent time series from 95 to 2020 and soon to 22. Exiobase started in the European FP6 project Exiopol about now 15 years ago. This was a one-year input-output table for the year 2000. It was followed by an FP7 project where we did update to 2007. And since Exiobase 3, we have a time series of MRIO tables. The outcome of this last project called Desire was Exiobase 3.4. And since then, we at the Industrial Ecology Program at NTNU have mostly maintained Exiobase. And we now try to, with kind of irregular updates, and we try now to provide regular yearly updates through this startup EXIO in collaborations with the NTNU Industrial Ecology Program. In Exiobase 3, we had, as I said, this outcome of the Desire project, which was released 2018, which was Exiobase 3.4. We have two offshoots of Exiobase, which were kind of academic exercises to see if we can extend Exiobase in different directions. The latest was Exiobase 3RX, where we tried to, or where we actually incorporated all countries of the world explicitly modeled, but we only did this for the land use. The latest release we have now is Exiobase 396, which was released this year. We have currently Exiobase 3.10 in beta status and are started working on Exiobase 3.11, which will come in fall 26. In the current release, we had several updates. The most important one were the update on the energy and emission accounts. And we now also incorporate the official Eurostat figure tables. And we have updated land use labor accounts and linked to other extensions, which are kind of experimental currently. In 3.10, we will extend the time series to 22. We have new stressors and impacts, which I will describe in detail a little bit later. And as I said, the release is late 25 or early 26. This is an overview of the Exiobase data pipeline, and I will go into details a little bit more in the next slide. So we have top-level data sources which go into Exiobase, and these are the main constraints which we harmonize the other data sources or all the optimization and harmonization to. And the most important one is the United Nations System of National Accounts main aggregates database, which gives us GDP, final demand, value-added values. We combine this with the Taiwanese National Statistical Agency data because it's not in the UN. And then we have other data sources for industry output, also from the UN and national statistical agencies, for physical production, also from the FAO, and from material flow database or from the Vienna Economic University. Energy data is mostly from the International Energy Agency. We use the BACI database for the trade data combined with the UN service trade data. And then we have data from Exiobase 2, which gives us technical coefficients, and also the technical coefficients from other national statistical agencies and accounts. With these data sources, we built 4 internal databases, one on microeconomic data, one on industry output, one on the trade data, and one on the technical coefficients. We make these 4 data sources internally consistent and then combine them to initial supply use tables. The supply use tables are basically input-output tables separated into supply and use. Then we scale these to the official Eurostat figure supply use tables, which also include supply use tables from other countries. And then optimize these initial tables to the final tables, obeying all these economic constraints we got from the other data sources. And this gives us then a balanced, globally consistent supply use table framework, which we then convert into input-output tables. In terms of sector details, we follow NACE 1.1 and CPA 2002. Since Exiobase started with this classification, we have currently project ongoing to convert this to NACE 2 classification. Through the data harmonization, we have to do some adjustments in energy, agriculture, and waste accounts. We try to be consistent with NACE 1.1 naming and numbering in the codes, and as soon as we have a deviation or as additional sector, we usually put a letter on it. So if you find the letter P16W, it means it's a waste account for the P16 sector you would find in the CPA 2002. We concentrate on sectors which are environmentally relevant, and our energy data in Exiobase is consistent with the National Energy Agency energy balances. There are many use cases for Exiobase. Traditionally, most of it was for carbon and environmental footprints of households, of nations, also product groups. We see now a lot of uptake in reporting for greenhouse gas protocol accounting in scope 1, 2, and 3. Also, a lot of supply chain and trade analysis is currently done with Exiobase, and there are also some studies out for disaster and impact assessment. I want you now to present some projects I'm currently working on with Exiobase. The first one is BAMBOO, which focuses on biodiversity of non-food commodities and trade patterns. And within BAMBOO, we are currently linking Exiobase with Fabio, which is another input-output table fully based on FAO data with a lot of detail on agriculture products. In this project, we are also linking Exiobase with the UNEP-GLAM framework and to GloBio impact assessment methods. The second project is Rainforest, which is kind of a sister project to BAMBOO, where we analyze the food trade and its biodiversity impacts. And here we also link Exiobase to the LCA impact assessment framework. And then I have a project running which is called Haiti, where we're looking mostly into uncertainties of MRIOs and on efficient data handling and computational pipelines. So these 3 projects are kind of cross-cutting. And here we, in BAMBOO and in Rainforest, we try to, or we link Exiobase stressors to several impact assessment frameworks. We started with GLAM, and for that we had to convert the Exiobase stressors to ILCD flows, elementary flows. We did this in a 2-stage process. So we first converted the Exiobase stressors to these flows, which gives us a new satellite account for Exiobase, which is consistent with this ILCD flows. For that, we build a bridge from our Exiobase stressors to these flow names. So in the next Exiobase release, there will be a new satellite account which describes flow name, flow class 1, 2, and this UID for the stressor, consistent with this EP-LCA LCD framework. And with this, in the second stage, we could link it to GLAM, which gives us several new impact categories for Exiobase. And I'm focusing here on the middle column of this figure, where we have several impacts like climate change, for ecosystem quality, we have ecotoxicity, eutrophication, acidification, and so on. And GLAM then aggregates these into 3 areas of protection: human health, ecosystem quality, and socioeconomic assets. This gives us several new impact categories. So we have now climate change and its consequences, ecosystem quality consequences on freshwater, marine, and terrestrial ecosystems, be it ecotoxicity, eutrophication, terrestrial acidification, land use, and water consumption. 4 more human health impacts, and also now socioeconomic assets. And just yesterday, we got the first results of this run. So these are the GLAM areas of protection, and we calculated footprints for all 3 of them. So for ecosystem quality, human health, and socioeconomic assets. The top row shows you the total footprints of these 3 areas of protection. Not so much surprising here. The biggest countries have the highest footprints here, so China, United States. We see, for example, the rest of the world, Africa, in the socioeconomic assets that are $1 trillion, by the way. And in the second row, we then calculated this footprints per capita. And what I find surprising in this picture so far is that for European countries, we see them on both ends of the scale. So if you look at ecosystem quality, we find Greece, Ireland, Switzerland on the top half of the graph. And then we also find countries like Slovakia, Latvia, Czechia on the bottom half, which is not the case for carbon footprints so far. And similar pictures for human health and socioeconomic assets. We then also looked into the timeline, and here we separated into advanced and emerging economies. So we have ecosystem quality, human health, and socioeconomic assets, and how they develop over time. And we see, in particular for the emerging economies, we see the first impacts of Corona and COVID in the last year. And then we looked into the development of the relationship between the impact, and here's ecosystem quality, to GDP per person. And this gives us these graphs where you can follow the development. In the very middle of the picture, we have China, which started at the very bottom and now is rapidly increasing. And this is a pattern we see for most of the Asian regions, India, Asia Pacific as well. And then we have countries like Australia on the very top, which actually achieved quite a reduction of its ecosystem quality footprint, although at a very, very high level. European Union, these are the bubbles in blue, also managed to reduce their overall impact. And what we would like to see, or the goal would actually be for the countries to somehow come into the lower right corner, which gives us, kind of indication of decoupling. As I said, the figures were made yesterday, so we are very early in the analysis of the data. With the new impact categories, we can also use Exiobase to analyze planetary boundaries. And here we have the planetary boundary footprints from 95 to 22 for different categories. We have emerging economies on the left and advanced economies on the right. And the timeline shows you the development of the consumption footprint relevant for this planetary boundary. And the color indicates if the boundary is already surpassed for the specific boundary for the specific economy. We can then dig a little bit further, deeper. And here we have again, the advanced and emerging developing countries, and the global average in green, the emerging countries in orange, and the advanced economies in blue. And to which degree they exceed the planetary boundary in the last year. And then we can also look into how this translates to each individual country. And yeah, we have to, so even the color green actually would indicate already a surpass of the level of the planetary boundary. So this again, the figures from yesterday. This was the coupling with GLAM. We are now working also on coupling Exiobase with LCA Impact and GloBio. And this will happen through LCA Impact 2.0, which is currently under development, which will then also include the mean species abundance indicators from GloBio. And the LCA Impact 2 team is currently working on quite a lot of new impact indicators. A lot of them are focused on marine ecosystems. So there will be marine eutrophication, plastic entanglement, invasive species, and so on. And there are also some experimental new indicators on power lines, on noise pollution. This does not mean that all of them will be in Exiobase. We then have to check which flows and stressors are relevant for them and what we can then link with Exiobase. We are also coupling with the product environmental footprint categories. The same story here. We have to see what we can actually couple with Exiobase, but most of them can be described with the stressors and flows we have in Exiobase. So now we have about, yeah, as I said, it's around 1,000 stressors and impacts we currently have. But some of, or many of them are actually distributed to different activities. So we have, for example, methane emissions by different activities and so on. In total, we have 35 air emissions, some land use, water use, nutrients, a lot of material data. We have also employment value added, and as I said, this ILCD elementary flow names. We got some criticism in Exiobase 3.9 to not include impacts anymore. So we now have, in 3.10, the impacts will be back and we will extend them. So we have this traditional aggregated impacts like total land use, total material use, and so on. Climate indicators, now all based on assessment report 6. Currently we have GWP 100 values, but we will also include 20 and 500. And then we have this new UNEP-GLAM impact categories. We will include the PEF in Exiobase 3.10. LCA impact, it's a little bit a question mark, either in 3.10 or in 3.11. There was already some uptake of, or there was a lot of uptake of Exiobase in policy. There is one problem with that. If we look into specific countries, we have to do a lot of data harmonization to compile a globally consistent system for Exiobase, which means that individual country levels, imports, exports, inter-industry relationships, final demand values are changed from their official statistics. And national statistical agencies don't like that. We developed now a framework which was successfully applied in Sweden and Norway already, where we keep the economic and environmental accounts for a specific country fixed and describe the imports to these countries with Exiobase. This is the whole framework is known under Simplified Single Country National Accounts Consistent Approach, SNAC approach. Last year we did that for Norway. We worked together with the SSB here, which provided us with the official statistics for Norway for economy and greenhouse gas accounts, and then coupled it with Exiobase 3.9, and then did an analysis how this value, how this affects the Norwegian carbon footprint. On the right, you see a bar graph. The first bar is now the official Norwegian carbon footprint, and then compared with other MRO databases. There's Figaro from Eurostat, Global Carbon Project, Gloria EORA database, and Exiobase 3.8 values, which we had before. And this is actually a pattern we see also for other smaller countries, that the data harmonization mostly affects the smaller countries, and their approach where we keep this small country fixed and don't change them so much helps a lot to provide more realistic figures on their carbon footprints. For the commercial applications of Exiobase, so far it's mostly scope 1, 2, 3 emission accounts, and we actually provide them in a ready-made table for the different products separated into these 3 accounts. We also provide them either as aggregates or as separated into the different greenhouse gases. We are very close to also have the downstream emissions now for specific products. And we have the same data set, of course, without scope 2 for the other impact categories, so for biodiversity, land, water, materials, and so on. Exiobase is one of the data sources mentioned in the greenhouse gas protocol to do this kind of stuff. The main data source for greenhouse gas emission accounts should always be an LCA study. It's much more detailed, but at one point you have a cutoff in an LCA study, or you cannot do an LCA for all the inputs in the company, and there Exiobase is, or any MRO can help to fill the gaps. And this is also why we outlined this table in that matter. So for example, if you have import sugar beet from Austria and you get actually the scope 1 emissions from your supplier, you can replace the average data we have here with your supplier data, and you can then use the other 2 columns to fill the other data you're missing, and so on for the other procurement data. So these are the uses. So how can you use Exiobase? So it's freely available on Zenodo for academic research. We have a dual license option, so you can contact us if you need a different kind of license. Exiobase is provided in basically tab separated files. So you could potentially open them in Excel, but they are too large to handle in without any programming language. But there's no limitation on what you can use. So we have seen Exiobase analysis in Julia, in R. I use mostly Python, and I developed a package for Exiobase and MRO analysis, which is called Pymrio. And it is ideal actually if you want to do multiple MRO analysis in a row for scenario analysis and so on. But you can, of course, also just use it for a single MRO analysis. It is, I try to have it fully documented. It's never fully documented, but to a large degree. And it's also open for collaboration for any other contributions to the data. In Pymrio, the data model follows the economic structure I presented before. So we have this economic core with the E and Z metrics and the final demand. We have extensions and separated into the extensions for the inter-industries and for the extensions to the final demand. And these are actually then mirrored as objects in an MRO class. And then we have this individual matrices as pandas data frames in this object. And if we then store this MRO, it again mirrors the same structure. So if you want to do your first MRO analysis with Exiobase, Pymrio is available on pip, UV, and Condor. So if you're using Python, you know this stuff. It has a function to automatically download MROs and also, of course, Exiobase. So there's one function, I have it in line 2 here, which downloads Exiobase from Zenodo. It always takes the latest version unless you specify you want to have a different one. And there's one command to read the Exiobase into the memory. And then you can inspect what data you already have there. And then there's one function call, which is called calc_all, which checks which accounts are missing in the different objects. So if, for example, in this particular case, we have the air emissions, but we're missing the consumption-based accounts, which is D_CBA. Calc_all sees that these are missing and that all the data for calculating this is actually available, and then it makes the calculation. So with one comment, you get all the accounts which are possible to calculate with the MRO you just downloaded. There are, of course, many other functions for diagonalizing stressors and impacts, which helps you to, or which allows you to analyze where a specific impact due to consumption occurs. We have characterization function now, which allows you to have regional or sector-specific characterization factors. There's aggregation methods for sectors and regions, and also several functions for handling MRO data and extension accounts. Said it's documented, there's a documentation online. Said it's also, we have some collaborators already or contributors to the data, and I'm very open for all contributions to the Pymrio package. The next steps for Pymrio is that we want to increase the computational possibilities. So we're looking into Monte Carlo sampling with implemented in Pymrio with an easy method to parallelize this either on HPC clusters or on cloud computational instances. We're also looking in GPU acceleration and some more analysis methods, in particular for supply chains, which you do via Tyler series extension of the Leontief inverse. Yeah. This brings me almost to the end of the presentation. Something a little bit outside of Exiobase. We have 2 communities or collections online. Yeah, industrial ecology here means not the industrial ecology program of NTNU, but the global community. We have a GitHub community, which is under GitHub/intercol. And we have a dashboard there where we collect all kinds of open source software for industrial ecology and sustainability analysis. Have a look there. If you have any code you want to contribute or a package you come across which you think is useful for sustainability analysis, just let me know. You can contact me on GitHub and we edit there. You can edit there via pull request. It's actually quite a long list now, and it's quite interesting to scroll through it. And we have a similar community on Zenodo for sustainability data. So if you have sustainability data set or developed one, have it as an SI in an article, I'm very happy to include it there as well. So if you deposit it on Zenodo, you can link it to the industrial ecology and sustainability research community. That is not exclusive. You can have the data in as many communities as you want. And I tend to think that it helps actually with the update. And again, it's quite interesting to scroll through this collection we already have there. Yeah, so what's next? This whole presentation is online on exiobase.idl.no. I keep it online for next year. I use the same address as soon as I have an update on Exiobase and update this presentation. There are links to downloading Exiobase using Pymrio. We have a LinkedIn group for Exiobase. There's a link there in the middle. If you search on LinkedIn for Exiobase, you will find it. And this is now current our main discussion forum for Exiobase. Yeah, if you have a commercial interest in Exiobase or Exiobase data, please reach out to us through Exio Sustainability Analytics. And on the bottom, you also have the links I just presented on the code and community dashboard. Okay, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Konstantin. So we have a good set of questions. So I'll go straight to them. The first one is, can you tell us more about indigenization of CFC and how it enables the assessment of the impacts of a full industry/product life cycle?
I didn't get the first part of the question. Can you repeat the impact?
Yeah, if you can tell us more about the indigenization of CFC and how it enables the assessment of the impact of a full industry or product life cycle.
So with indigenization, we have currently experimental work going on for the incorporation of capital stocks into the footprint calculations. So the idea behind is that there is data or there is investment into capital stock, which is currently not included in a consumption footprint of a consumer, although it's necessary to build the infrastructure to then finally build the product which is consumed. There are a couple of articles out by Richard Wood which describe this method, and we plan to include this in a future update of the emission factors as a separate item to have them in the carbon footprints.
Fantastic. So yeah, the next one is there a description of Exiobase sectors? I know there are concordance tables to NACE, but I haven't found description for all sectors yet.
Yeah. We have a link out with the concordance tables. There is also concordance tables which describe the sectors, but only by name. They are following the CPA and NACE classification. So I think Eurostat has a lookup table out where you can enter a product and then find to which CPA or NACE category a specific product belongs. But if you have a specific question, just drop me an email and we can have a look in if you have a question to a specific product.
Perfect. Yeah, and then next one is it possible to use the Exiobase to disintegrate the estimated environmental impacts from production and consumption-based accounting to different scopes of emissions 1 to 3 at the product and industry level classification, and what aspects to consider or limitations when interpreting such information? Yeah,
we have scope 1, 2, 3. So in the MRO table, the scope 1 emissions are basically the direct emission by industry sector, and you can then have either by product or industry classification. For the scope 2 emissions, you use the input-output table and look into the supply of energy into the sector you are interested in and set the other inputs to 0. And the scope 3 emissions are basically the total supply chain emissions minus the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. These are then only the upstream emissions. And for the downstream emissions, we are currently working on a method to also include them in the scope 3. These are finished, that is upstream and scope 1, 2 are finished products, which we have ready. So just reach out to us if you're interested in these.
Fantastic. And next one is, I'm going a bit fast, so have a good set, and I want us to cover most of them. So how does this version of Exiobase compare to the consequential version of Exiobase?
It's an attributional version of Exiobase, and it's a monetary version of Exiobase. There was a physical version is also out of Exiobase managed by 2.0 LCA, which follows a consequential approach. Here we do attributional because we want to see, basically it's an accounting exercise where we want to see how the specific product which is reported by these databases, how much carbon or whatever environmental stressor is included in it now, not what would happen if you buy another one which is not covered yet. So that's different purposes of the two databases.
Right. And next one is, can you say something about the difference between Exiobase and OpenSEDA? This seems to be the other main database people are using for corporate reporting.
Yeah, I think the OpenSEDA has a comparison on it. I don't really want to say much about the differences. I think you have to look and see what's more important for you. I think the main differences between these two is that SEDA is built on the US data and then extrapolated to other countries, where we have a more European Union focus from the beginning and working with the national statistic of specific countries. So there is not one country we then use as extrapolation for the other countries. Yeah, but I'll leave it with that.
Yep. And the next question is, I used to get weird results with Exiobase using certain years, especially when data was nowcasted from previous years. How should we use this nowcasted data properly, and when should we avoid it?
Yeah. We are actually still hesitant if we should put out this nowcasted data. We have seen, so first, you should never use it for a sector analysis. It's meant to be an extrapolation for country footprints for the next 1, 2, 3 years. If you're interested into a specific sector and you need to nowcast the data to the current year, take the latest data source, which is not nowcasted, and then do inflation adjustment. The nowcasts are really just best guesses. I think we need do a better stop to communicate that. It should only, if you use it, it should only be on a country level, and it should only be as an informed guess of what could happen. They're really just based on GDP forecasts by the International Monetary Fund. This is the data which goes into this nowcast, and then all the other stuff is basically adjusted so that it meets this estimate of the GDP value, which might even be wrong. So we have seen this now for Corona or something, that the nowcast is of course completely off, because it was based on something where we didn't know that Corona would happen. Yeah.
Right. And the next question is, I can see and download the datasets for 21 and 2022 in the Exiobase 396 repository. Are these datasets based on a beta version? Should I interpret or use them with caution?
Interpret them with caution. So the last year is described on its Zenodo site page. It's 2020. And very soon we will have Exiobase 3.10, which will then have data up to 2022, which is not nowcasted. So then it can be really used for all this analysis as well.
Right. And the next one is one I had as well. So will the new ILCD plus elementary flows help characterize the stressors with other LCIA methods than the ones mentioned in slide 23, 24?
Yeah, so that's the idea. So we really hope that this will be developed further as the main classification for environmental interventions. So we now, as I said, we link it already to GLAM, LC impact, and PEP. And yeah, so we have the whole data pipeline set up. So if there are other characterization methods, it's very easy for us, or actually also for you, because everything is open source, to characterize them as well with these other methods.
Right. And then you covered a bit the licensing structure. The next question is, what will be the license of Exiobase from now on, if you want to comment a bit on that?
Yeah. So it's CC BY share alike non-commercial for academic research, so you can just download it and use it. We have a kind of a dual license option. So if you have a commercial use, please go through Exiobase, and then we can give you a commercial license for the data. And also, as an academic researcher, if this license is too restrictive for you, please reach out to us, and we can also arrange something. The main reason for this more restrictive license now is that we have seen a lot of derived products reselling Exiobase data without attribution at all. So we want to restrict this a little bit. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. Next question is, since the MRIO model is expressed in monetary terms, prices play a critical role when it is applied to sustainability reporting. Take electricity, for instance, it appears in the dataset with a breakdown by generation technology, but how can one link a company's actual electricity bill expressed in 2025 euros and measured in megawatt hours to the various technology-specific footprints that refer to different years and price bases?
Yeah.
The same challenge applies to gas and other commodities whose prices have fluctuated significantly across regions in recent years. So if you use the factors for the recent year, you have to inflation adjust them, and we can help you with that. There is the second, so this is kind of, a given. The second thing is then, of course, you have varying prices over a year. You need to be, it's the average price over the year. You have to consider that when you do the analysis. So if the price is varying a lot, you might get a better results if you have some price tracking, and then use that to actually calculate the footprints. As I said, if you do a corporate reporting, and I think the question alludes to that, Exiobase is always the kind of the gap filler behind. So if you have any other data which is more detailed, always use it. Yeah. And related to that, in a way, what is the current status of importing Exiobase in Brightway? So, for example, for use in hybrid LCA to fill gaps.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I'm not working with Brightway so much. I have seen that they had it at one point. The structure of Exiobase did not change, and I had conversation with Chris Motels a year ago or something, and I know that he uses the import method I developed for Exiobase in Pymrio. So principally it should work, but I didn't try it. So the same is, I think, the case for OpenLCA as well. They have the same framework then.
Great. Then there is a question about pollutant emissions. So as I understand, most pollutant emissions are to air. Emissions to water and soil are too difficult or possible to implement in the future.
Yeah, so currently we don't have them, except of course for the fertilizers. But we'll hope that come in the future. We will see. But this probably requires another project to incorporate them. We rely very much on international databases, so it's kind of, you can always do this for one country, but to be included in a global MRO database, you need data on all countries in the world, or have a good way to estimate them for missing data points or for missing countries.
And could you elaborate on the scenarios where conducting an input-output analysis would be more advantageous than using traditional LCAs?
I think that depends on the use case. We have future scenarios based on Exiobase. I know that ETH Zurich is currently linking Exiobase with image data for estimates. But of course, I also know that Premise is coupled with Brightway to do LCA scenarios. I think it's kind of, again, it's what are you interested in? Are you interested in a specific product and how it changes with the background of integrated assessment models, or are you interested in carbon footprint and trade patterns? I think the one is more you do a scenario with LCA, the other one is more you do a scenario with input-output analysis.
Okay, and then we have two more questions. How feasible is it to convert these monetary-based models to physical-based models, considering cross-currency adjustments?
Yeah. There are two things. The first one is, if you talk about the input-output table, it's hard to convert these prices. If you talk about the output of the input-output table, which I have with the scope 1 to 3 emissions and so on, then it's really just a question of applying the prices of the specific year. Of course, it's again the average price, and then you get the average product mass or whatever. So there it's actually doable. But if you want to have the full system internally consistent with all the trade patterns, it's it's a different product than altogether, and this would be actually the Exiobase consequential version, which does that, but which doesn't have the update to this year. So with the monetary data, we actually have a shorter timeline of updates from national agencies on the data.
Right. And are there plans to support consumer prices in future releases or providing a concordance matrix? And just one more question about the license. If industry is using Exiobase without creating a commercial product out of it, is it okay to use it? Is it still allowed?
Yeah. So for consumer prices, we have them. We have this scope 3 emission data set. We also have in purchaser prices, if this was the question there. So reach out to us, then we can provide you with that. For the license, it's really, if you do it for a commercial gain for yourself, then it should be a commercial license. If you use it for research and not get commercial gain out of it, then it's academic use in our perspective. Yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer by email or just reach out to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Konstantin.
Thank you very much for moderating.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Konstantin. So that brings us to the end. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. And thanks again to Konstantin for the amazing presentation. I learned a lot more about Exiobase and what it should and shouldn't be used for. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and have a nice rest of your day from wherever you are joining us, and hope to see you again in a future seminar. Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for your questions.
Great. Thanks.